Hello everyone, my name is Prema Gaia and I'm a visionary writer and the founder of the Swan Sisterhood Collective, and I'm joined today by my beloved soul sister Achintya Devi, founder of the Goddess Rising Sisterhood, who's joining us from Hawaii, and we're here in Ashland, Oregon today, and I'm really excited and honored that Achintya is going to be interviewing me today about my spiritual awakening journey and some of the dark nights of the soul that I navigated through in stepping into my purpose. And so I am excited and very grateful to be with you today, Achintya, beloved.
It is such an honor to be here with you and to be here with you, our Swan Sisterhood Collective. Really want to take this moment right now for all of us to really bow to you for your creative vision and for you stepping forth into grounding this vision and this project for all of us. So thank you for your initiation and for switching roles now, where I get the deep, deep privilege of honoring you, Prema.
Thank you so much, love.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, so delighted to dive in. And as we get ready to begin, I'm wondering if you would be willing to lead us in a grounding meditation to help us all bring our energies fully present as we get ready to begin the interview.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So for those of you that are here, just make sure that you have turned off any notifications on any of your devices. You close any of the windows on your screen so that you can be fully present for this transmission, and you can bring yourself fully present now. And inviting you to close your eyes and to feel your hands on a part of your body, perhaps your heart or your womb space, your throat, your arms, as if you're giving yourself a hug. Maybe you want to do the crown of your head, wherever feels good for you. And then take 3 full deep breaths. And bringing all of your full awareness and presence to your body temple, to this present moment, and feeling your womb space, your sits bones connecting to the point of contact beneath you, so that your whole belly is relaxed, your jaw relaxed, softening your shoulders, your eyelids, your tongue. And then as you breathe, allow for gravity to descend and bring forth your womb space to the womb space of our great Mother Earth, where she is holding each and every one of us, sisters that are transmuting pain into beauty in our personal lives and for the collective, where the personal meets the transpersonal. And so we connect in the womb of the mother as her daughters and sisters of the swan. Feeling a cord of light into Mama Earth, grounding you into the sacred soils, and breathing up love and protection and presence and any other qualities that you would like to receive in this moment. And breathe that up through that cord of light into your womb space, and then up into your heart, and then up into the top of your head. We give thanks for the sacred masculine above us, Father Sky, for the structure of this Swan Sisterhood series and all the ways that it is allowing for our connection and insight and ahas and healing and transformation to come forth. And so we give thanks for the sacred structure above us. And we will have a moment of silence to welcome in any of our protectors, guides, guardians, ancestors, benevolent ones who are here to support this journey in each and every one of us in this present moment, whereby in the sharing of our stories, we are reflectors for one another, supporting one another on this powerful journey, on this precious Mama Earth in this lifetime now. We give great thanks for all of the benevolent ones present here. And we bow to each and every one of you who is present listening and honoring your journey of where you are at in this present moment, that you are welcomed and here just as you are in this moment now, accepted, supported, seen, felt, and celebrated. And so welcome. Taking a few moments to transition from the inner realm to the outer. And welcoming each and every one of you here, and what an honor and gift it is to be here with you, Prema Gaia.
Thank you, sister.
It's my deep honor and privilege. And so the tables are turned. I get to interview you now. Just what an honor. So I would love to begin by asking you, what drew you to creating this series?
Beautiful. So one of the deep inspirations and guiding lights for me in creating the Swan Sisters series, this series Swan Sisters Transmuting the Pain into Beauty, is a lot of suffering and a lot of pain and a lot of anguish and sadness and feelings of feeling alone or feeling like a lone wolf on my path, with a lot of trauma to transmute, and seeking role models, looking for examples of how I could transmute all of the trauma and suffering in my pain body and step into a life of thriving. So I was always curious when I would see these different visionary women leaders who were obviously very congruent, very inspiring, very loving, and magnetic. I was always so curious to go on their websites and to find out more about them and to learn, okay, what did they go through? What were some of the dark nights of the soul or the underworld journeys they went through in order to get to where they are today? I was so curious. I really wanted and needed examples of women who overcame tremendous adversity and were thriving and shining and in service and in their dharma. And so I would go and research all these different amazing leaders and visionaries, and I couldn't find the stories of their underworld journeys or the shadow walk or the dark night of the soul. I was so curious.
Yeah.
And I came across a quote by Brene Brown recently that said, our stories are not meant for everyone. And I'm paraphrasing, but something to the effect of, before we go to share our vulnerable life journeys, it behooves us to ask, has this person earned the right to hear my story? And that it is an honor to bear witness to the vulnerable and tender parts of our soul's journeys. So I started realizing the reason that leaders and women leaders in particular haven't really been laying out their underworld journeys and their shadow walk out in the public, or putting it on their websites, is because there wasn't really that sacred, reverential container to do so. And so I've had this vision for 6 years now to bring together a collective of big-hearted, extremely compassionate, loving, leaderful, amazing women who are willing to bare their souls and to lay down the masks and to just get really real and to offer those vulnerable pieces as a gift, as part of their dharma, as like the highest offering, you know, the tenderest parts being the highest, most valuable, sacred, precious heart offering that we can offer to one another. Because there are so many of us that are suffering or have suffered tremendously and have felt very alone, and have gone into places of despair and perhaps even thinking that they might not want to stick around in this world. There's too much pain, or the pain body sometimes feels overwhelming when it gets stirred up. And I know this all too well myself.
What a sacred service. I feel so grateful to you for bringing this forth, and for your courage in saying yes to this and following through, and for all of the hearts of all of the women who have said yes, including myself, to be a part of this with you. It is changing and supporting the lives of so many women. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I would love for you to share with us, what were some of the most catalytic or profound experiences that you had in your formative years, in your early life, that really stick out to you, that have really affected your life now? There's a whole trail of cookie crumbs that I'm sure you may be curious about as listeners, as you know, you have listened to all of our interviews of Prema interviewing, and now to hear this from you. So I would love to know some of those key pieces in your formative years that were really catalytic for you, and that really were really significant pieces of your journey for where you are now.
Thank you. So I incurred a tremendous amount of trauma in childhood, and a lot of emotional pain. And my heart was very, very broken, and I felt quite broken in my childhood and my teens and my formative years. A lot of pain, a lot of grief, and I didn't know what to do with it, or didn't have a container to process it, so I just kind of tucked it all inside. And I had no idea actually how much grief and anguish and pain was in there. By the time I turned 15, I discovered alcohol in boys, like right around the same time. And I just was able to express myself in those ways of, like, allow parts of myself to come out and be expressed that had been tucked away. It was some wild times, and I would drink to get drunk. I blacked out a lot. Part of what was happening in those days was I was really, really really, more than anything else, I wanted to be held in the arms of divine love, mother love, actually. I wanted so badly. So I wanted really badly to be held and comforted. And the pathway that I ended up searching for that was, you know, kissing and making out with and being flirtatious and connecting with lots of different young boys and men. And so under the influence of a lot of alcohol. And that did not go very well. And the other aspect of that was that I feel like I've always been a healer, and that I've always had that priestess essence of like being in service, and I believe that I've always had hands of light, and I've always wanted to transmit love, and I've had so much love that I wanted to share. So another aspect of that was wanting to share and transmit my love and Shakti, and allow myself to be a channel for Shakti, but I had no idea what that was back then. I was like, well, this feels profound. What is this energy, you know? And wanting to be in that field and open that channel and share it. I was like, this is powerful energy. This is healing.
Yeah, that place of liberation and expression and communion.
Yeah. My early explorations of the possibility of pleasure being a great healer, but not knowing how to navigate that in a skillful way that was really serving. So I continued on that path. I basically found I really wanted friends and to fit in, and so I basically intentionally folded up aspects of myself, my self-expression, my spirituality, my creativity, and I just basically wanted to find out what everyone else in my high school thought was cool, which musicians or pop stars they thought were cool, and just go with that. What's the status quo? I just wanted to merge in with the status quo. I really wanted to belong. And so I attained my goal. By the end of high school, I had officially merged myself in with the status quo and found ways to have, like, you know, to get invited to the cool parties and things that I thought I wanted at that time. And so I continued on a path of sedating and distracting myself for several years. I sedated myself with drugs and alcohol, ecstasy, and eventually some cocaine and a little exploration with different drugs, and then binge drinking. I continued, you know, sedating myself throughout university and got my business degree, still like as a high functioning substance abuser with a huge emotional pain body, a bright light, big smile on my face, and I did not even know anything. When I first heard the phrase healing arts, I was like, why would anyone need that? I had no idea. Like, yeah, I was born in a conservative, bureaucratic, patriarchally influenced region, which is Ottawa, Canada, with a very predominant culture of people working in a very structured patriarchal system, and it's a very, very predominant culture there. And so I was not exposed to spirituality at all. I somehow just missed all of it until, like, I don't know, like 23 or 24. I remember one time someone mentioned about someone being a spiritual person. When I was about 23, I heard that phrase and I was like, what does that mean? Never heard it before. I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So.
So in those experiences for you that really were early on, that really led to some different ways of life that happened later on for you. And I'm wondering if within that context you could share with us some of the experiences that happened a little bit later that were really striking for you, and that stand out for you of what really were some of the most challenging experiences for you that were really going into the dark night of your soul.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, I'd be happy to share about that. So once I graduated from university, I'll share about an awakening, which then was the catalyst for one of my first dark nights of the soul. So once I graduated from university, I decided to move to Los Angeles. I had some family members there, and I wanted to explore the entertainment industry and the modeling industry. So when I arrived in LA, a lot of doors opened up for me. It was amazing. It was extraordinary. It was around that time that I started doing like Tony Robbins work and this like personal empowerment stuff. And anyway, but a lot of doors opened up for me, and I ended up having a very high level of access to like celebrity culture, like A-list celebrity clubs, Hollywood Hills house parties, celebrities' houses, and and I just got invited to a lot of things, and I started doing some modeling. I did some TV commercials. I danced on a few episodes of Soul Train. I had some glamorous, exciting, funny. Did some music videos, TV commercials, yeah, and just got right into that culture, and I was so fascinated by it all.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, there's some magic here. And I was like, are these people happy? I was so curious. I was like, they're very beautiful. Let's see if I get to know better, dig in deeper. Like, is this where the happiness is? Because I was still what I call asleep at the wheel and didn't know it. And so I was excited to have this glamorous life, though. I had a lifestyle like that for a couple of years, and I ended up starting to eat less and less food and be down to like, I'm 5'9", and I was down to like 120 and like a size 4. And so I was eating less and less and getting into some eating disordered behaviors, over exercising and then fasting and then overeating and things like that. So, but I ended up going to Europe and modeling, and I ended up having an agent in 5 different countries in that brief time, because I've always been kind of a go-getter and a weaver and a networker. So when I'm doing something, I tend to be able to make things happen.
Yes, you
do. So in that time, an interesting thing happened. I ended up dating this brilliant billionaire investor, and having the experience of flying in a private plane and this whole like very affluent lifestyle, which I had always been really intrigued about. I was like, what's that like? And then boom, this experience materialized, and I was like, that was really, really intriguing. One of the reasons I find it so intriguing is because to be at that pinnacle of like such wealth and affluence around me, and then later on in my life, which I'll share later, being guided to give away every single possession till I only had the clothes on my back, and cut all the cords from the false self and start from scratch, basically be reborn. So yeah, so to get to the awakening that catalyzed my first dark night of the soul, this billionaire friend of mine had dropped me off on a private plane. We went on a vacation to Mallorca and stayed in this amazing, gorgeous hotel, and I had my own room, and I was like jumping on the bed. I was like, this is so cool, room service. And anyway, we flew to London on the private plane. We had like pilots on call just waiting for us, like for our like vacation weekend, and just anyway, we flew to London and stayed in this beautiful hotel called Claridge's. And then I ended up deciding to go down to the south of England to go visit a former boyfriend, this very inspiring man that I had met on travels to Honduras a couple years before. So I went and down to visit this man with like my big pink Gucci sunglasses and my like sexy little halter dress and kind of big ego, and not really present, and definitely not in my true self. I was so shocked to discover he had basically turned into what I considered at the time like a monk. Mm-hmm. He had given away a lot of his possessions. He was doing all these 10-day meditation retreats and loving it. And he told me, I actually don't care if I never have sex again. I just want to be on my spiritual path. I'm seeking liberation. And he just basically like transmitted to me. I was like, what happened to you? And then I was just like, I'm even more in love with you now. Oh my God, you're so righteous. Like, you're so spiritual. What is this? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That 10-day meditation retreat, that sounds like hell, cut to by 10 years later, I had done countless 10-day meditation retreats myself. But so he showed me a book that he had that was talking about meditation and spiritual practices.
Do you know what the book was?
I do, yeah. It was called The Art of Living by Goenka. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Vipassana meditation teacher, the well-known Vipassana meditation teacher. So he showed me this book, and I was like, I have to read that book. I have to read that. I need to know what it is that's changed your whole life. Yeah. And he was like, I'll give it to you if you'll read it. but he was like, I don't, he's like, okay, but don't waste it. Like, it's important. And so he gave it to me. And then I left. I went back up to London. And yeah, that's the last time I've seen him, actually.
Wow.
But I don't have his contact anymore, so Howard Long, if you're watching.
That's what Facebook is for.
I know. Anyway, so yeah, he gave me this book, and I went up to London, and I ended up visiting with another friend from high school, and I got completely hammered that night, completely wasted, as I liked to do back in those days, drinking to get drunk. So I got totally wasted. I think I just felt so much of the, like, my pain body was like coming up, and my soul was like starting to want to burst, and it was like just all of these things that were like so much movement. And I was just like, okay, because I used to consider myself a ticking time bomb. I always knew I was a ticking time bomb. When I was in LA and at all these celebrity parties and hobnobbing, I was like, tick, 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 like, this is not going to last. You know, I could feel it. Like, I was like, I know that because why am I going home and binging my face off at night and then exercising for 5 hours at, you know, Gold's Gym till 2 a.m, trying to keep my 6-pack abs? Like, this is a ticking time bomb. It can't last, you know? So I got very inebriated that night with my old friend from high school, and just bemoaning about my life and how I, you know, had not been able to create any lasting happiness for myself, and what am I doing with my life, and I'm in love with this Buddhist monk, and you know, I'm like,
He's never gonna have sex with me.
Exactly. He's not even attracted to me anymore. So it was so interesting, but I got, you know, like I said, I got drunk, and then I ended up missing my flight the next day. So I was at the airport. I like dashed to the airport, you know, and my typical way in that time was like, yeah, just trying to, like, just running around and fight or flight, and, you know, just trying to make it all work. And I missed my flight. And so I ended up being stuck in that airport for 24 hours straight with nothing to do, no one to talk to, nowhere to go, nothing to pass the time.
No internet.
We didn't have internet back then.
Yeah.
Nothing. And then all of a sudden I pulled out the book, and I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do for the next 24 hours. Yeah. So I read the whole book cover to cover, and that was it. You know, that was the turning point. It changed my whole life. I was like, whatever this Vipassana thing is, I have to do it.
So this was in the Heathrow airport in London.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, very glamorous place for a spiritual awakening.
In London,
The shamanic
darling,
moment. The shamanic moment in Heathrow.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So that was a massive turning point for you.
Yeah. Nothing could ever be the same after that. And then after my first 10-day retreat, nothing could ever really be the same. You know, I did a 10-day retreat a year after that. I'd already started changing my life. I changed my life in many, many ways as soon as I read the book. But it took me about 10 months to a year to do my first retreat. And after the first retreat, I did one last modeling photo shoot, and you can see in my eyes that I'm not asleep anymore. Like, there's a transmission in my eyes in all of those photos. It's my most powerful photo shoot, and that was my last photo shoot in that way.
So that really served as a big turning point in your life, and gave you really a whole new opening and expansion in your whole existence of reality,
Totally.
which feels like was the groundwork then for what was to come, and some of the next pieces that came through that actually were more challenging.
Yeah, little did I know the level of hell that I needed to go into in order to feel all those 25 years of unfelt grief, trauma, angst, you know, despair, pain, like just separation from, you know, from source, and just, you know, family constellation trauma and disconnection and abuse. And so we've had this conversation a little bit about how, you know, there's the dark night of the soul, but that doesn't necessarily mean just one night, you know, that this can be years of our life. Definitely.
You know,
Yeah.
and like that I've experienced that too, years of feeling that's like, it's not just this one experience, but actually many, or whole pieces of time. And so in your awareness and what you feel that you can now look back on and see, what does that feel like for you to say, you know, my dark night of the soul was what?
Well, after that awakening, which was in 2001, I ended up, my whole entire life changed and did a 180. I ended up becoming 100% raw vegan. I started doing tons of yoga. I started doing Vipassana retreats and creating my own meditation practice. I moved to a more conscious community. So many things in my life started to change. I was like, I want to be in service. So I started looking into ways that I could create service projects, and I just wanted to change everything. So I would say one of my biggest dark nights of the soul began in 2004 and lasted for many, many years. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of on a bit of a high when I had my awakening, and I was exploring all these new things, and I was kind of boosted by all the inspiration of what I was discovering. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, I became 100% raw vegan for 9 months in 2003, but it was kind of a perpetuation in some ways of disordered eating, simply more because of where I was coming to it from. You know, there's definitely people who can navigate raw veganism in a very different way than I did at the time. Mm-hmm. So what ended up happening after those 9 months of being a raw vegan, I ended up going into this huge, basically year-long, like, binge and just underworld journey of because I wasn't able to sustain that again. It was depriving myself, and mm-hmm. it was just not sustainable for me, because I wasn't grounded enough to be able to sustain it, and I was also doing a lot of fasting. It was still kind of woven in with some of my, disordered ways of thinking that I had picked up through the modeling industry, which I thought that I was already too mature that was not going to affect me, but it affects pretty much everyone that I know who's been in it, So anyway, by 2004, I stopped eating raw and I started eating everything in sight, because even that fasting and everything, it purified me, but it brings the pain body up to the surface. It brings everything out. That's kind of part of what fasting does. I didn't really realize that at the time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I was binging and binging. I ended up putting on 35 pounds in a couple months, 2-3 months. I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't want any of my old friends to see me. I shut down rather than seeking support and being like, hey, this is what's going on for me. I isolated myself from my old friends, and it was really interesting where the mind goes when you've been conditioned that,
What were some of the feelings that you were experiencing at that time?
Oh, that I'm hideous, that I'm not lovable, that I need to go somewhere and hide myself until I can figure out how to lose weight, that I'm just unworthy, very much unworthy. And it came back into some of the conditioning that I had received in my childhood, and so really painful and sad to think about. In the times where I most needed support, I did the opposite. Mm-hmm. And I cocooned myself, but not in a sweet chrysalis cocoon with healing whatever. It was just I isolated myself in places that I didn't have empathic, mm-hmm. authentic relating tribe support at all. Yeah. So what I ended up doing, sadly, was I ended up getting on a plane to go teach English in Asia, so that I could basically isolate myself and deal with my stuff by myself with no tribe, no support. And so that was one of the most awful years of my life. Mm-hmm. Completely isolated, mm-hmm. no close friends. I can make friends. I'm a personable being, so I can make friends, but
that pain was so strong that you went across the world so that you wouldn't be seen.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So from that space on my path, I didn't realize at the time, but I was on quite a spiritual bypass for a number of years, because there was so much pain and so much grief, such heavy, painful emotions, that when I ended up unpacking those emotions and the pain body, there were times where it was utterly terrifying how intense those feelings were of all the stored up anguish and suffering and despair. It was terrifying. When that much stored up charged energy gets
and it's
released,
finally ready to be felt.
Yeah. So I was on quite a spiritual bypass for a number of years, but didn't know it and didn't really understand the full holistic picture of emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, and was just really working on my fortes, which were the intellect and the spirit, and leaving out the emotion. Yeah. And then the embodiment piece, also super important. So I ended up continuing to do tons and tons of meditation retreats. And then I had my second major awakening happened in 2006, where I ended up going to a group meditation where there was a book in the reading library that caught my eye, and it was a book about Peace Pilgrim. Yeah, the woman who walked something like 25,000 miles with a message: in order to have world peace, each of us needs to find inner peace, and when each of us finds inner peace, we will have world peace. And I got obsessed with Peace Pilgrim. And I started researching her and Googling her and watching any video and anything I could get my hands on, and I read the whole book, I don't know how many times. But I was like, okay, I had been studying Buddhism a lot and Eastern philosophies, and these, enlightened men from 1,000 years ago, and these Dogen Zenji and all these different people in caves and Ramana Maharshi, and it all sounds amazing. And it was just, I couldn't really identify in a certain way or sink my teeth into it. But here was this woman, from our culture, from a similar time period, and also a woman. And when I watched a video of Peace Pilgrim, I saw a transmission in her eye that was an activation for me. I was like, wait a second. She knows something really important, and I need to find that thing out for myself. So a sequence of events unfolded around that time where I started getting stronger and stronger inner guidance inside of my consciousness, my awareness, that was telling me, give away all of your possessions, give away all of your, not sell them, give them away. Every single thing. Start from ground zero, start from scratch. Every single thing until you only have the clothes on your back. And it was a very intense energy inside my consciousness because I didn't really know what inner guidance was still. I was like, what is this? What's going on? And
for such a dramatic message.
It was very dramatic. Yeah. And how many people, because I had started having some somewhat more conscious friends, but how many people would really be like, oh yeah, go for it. That's what your guidance is telling you. Back then, I didn't have the friends that would be like, if that's what your guidance is saying, really feel into that. And so I had to figure it out or tune into it mostly by myself.
Yes.
And so I had one friend that was an amazing catalyst. He was like, why not try it? I was like, one person, but it's all you need is that one supportive person. So anyway, it ended up being quite an inner turmoil until suddenly I was like, okay, that's it. Like, inner guidance, you win. I'm doing this. So it took me 2 weeks to give away all of my possessions and find homes for 30 years worth of accumulated possessions and all these different things. And I started realizing how meaningless so many of the things were that I had accumulated. And I ended up creating these free markets, going into the downtown area and just setting up a blanket and then having a free market with all my stuff, my rollerblades, my stereo, my clothes, and being like, just take anything you want. And people were like, what? And I was like, just take anything you want. But it took a long time to really properly recycle, regift, and actually properly give away or disseminate all my possessions. Took 2 weeks. And then my guidance was start walking, and you'll get the rest of the information later. My guidance also was saying, anything that you need will come back to you and be gifted to you, or there'll be other pathways where the things will return to you if you actually needed it. Super interesting. At that time, I also felt really called to throw my entire modeling portfolio in the recycle bin, because that was one of the things I was most attached to, because that was where I had thought, oh, I can maybe have some worth maybe I can finally have value as a human being. I could maybe be lovable if I can prove that I look pretty in photos. Maybe then people will think I have value, and maybe someone can love me, you know? So part of my awareness knew that was probably the most important thing for me to get rid of, you know, because that was the thing that there was all this misguided attachment. So I did recycle the whole thing. I dropped the whole thing in the recycle bin after so much work of making it so nice and beautiful over years, you know. And then I went onto the family's computer and I deleted and I double deleted like every single photo, modeling photo ever taken of me. I just like made sure it was all completely wiped from the computer because that was the only place that it was left. But interestingly, what ended up happening was my father had a hunch that I might change my mind later. So, and he's like a computer person, so he went in somehow into the system and he like retrieved all my modeling photos and put them in a folder and like didn't tell me. But it's interesting because it has come in handy like as a way of like, you know, depicting my story, what it's been like, the radical differences. And so and then other things like bikes being gifted to me at later times, you know, sleeping bags or anything I needed. Things were continually gifted to me when I needed them.
When you began
after
your
I gave
journey.
away. Yeah, so I gave away every single thing until I only had the clothes on my back. And I ended up walking.
Did you have a jacket? Like a warm
no,
jacket?
I had a hoodie. But I ended up deciding to do my walking pilgrimage and setting off on my walking pilgrimage with no possessions and no money. I only had a little bit of money left and I gave it away. So I set off on my walking pilgrimage I ended up walking from San Marcos, Texas to Mexico, 500 kilometers with no money and no possessions. And I just had a hoodie, but everything worked out. I was actually stoked. I was ecstatic. It was kind of an ecstatic experience. It was like, whoa.
You were dying and
exactly.
And then stepping into a whole new experience and chapter and existence of your life.
Totally. It was. I really felt like at the time I was studying the life of Ramana Maharshi, and I loved watching the documentary about how he, you know, struck with the utter futility of it all. He just gave away all his possessions and just, I remember, you know, hearing about the sannyasins who would basically consciously die to themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, in order to be reborn. And so in my Western way, I was like, that's what I want to do. That whole self, that was never actually me at all. Yeah. That was me trying to be something for a whole bunch of other people.
You were giving death to the lie.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, totally. Letting that whole go and seeing what the next thing, what the next chapter would be. Yeah. So it was interesting. Yeah, I was by myself, but I didn't feel lonely. Like I had all these magical experiences and people like meeting me, and like I remember people just feeling like they've known me from before and tears welling up in their eyes and being like, thank you for coming, we've missed you, and just tears. And I'm like, thank you. And it was profound, like my first reunion of like Soul Tribe, where people were just like, anything we can do for you, and they were so excited. I had like this Kundalini yoga teacher being like, oh, the Aquarian age is really here. When he heard about what I was doing, he was like, oh, it's happening, you know. Just like more and more signs of like people are waking up, you know.
In those moments where you were connecting with all of these new people that felt like a soul reunion, did you start to experience in your body, in your heart, what it was that you were longing for in your modeling?
I did. Yeah. And I was just, you know, wearing my frumpy little outfit and just like my little sun hat and just like walking down the train tracks. I walk like 30 miles a day, but I was having these like Satori moments of just like everything making sense, and I'm laughing and I'm crying and I'm ecstatic and I'm by myself, but I'm with everyone, and I'm just like blissed out. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing, you know, like. And then just magical, mystical dreams, like elevated, like, you know, realm of existence dreams, and just waking up crying tears of joy, and just like all these just magical doors being opened for me, in these magical little places to sleep and to camp out, and just like when I needed food, it's showing up, and like all these, I I was like in a really elevated state. I was like, oh my God, have I found inner peace? Like, did I do it? Like, because I was really blissed and really, and I had a lot of joy for several months, and, because it was just like I had let go of this heavy suitcase that was never mine, and be like, oh my gosh. So I hoped that maybe I had found something like a sustainable inner peace, but I actually I was still on a spiritual bypass and still hadn't done the deep emotional integration work and the pain body work and the inner alchemy and the sitting with and the breathing with all the feelings and the grief and the making peace with, and then the transmutation of relationships with family and the deep forgiveness, all those pieces that needed to come.
So that journey really set you in a way. It was you were liberating yourself. Mm-hmm. And in another way, that then started to begin to give you the fuel then for you to recognize, oh wow, there are pieces from that I'm leaving that mm-hmm. then need to be felt or need to mm-hmm. be integrated.
Yeah.
So did that turn into another experience of a dark night of the soul?
Yeah.
For you?
Definitely.
So, yeah. What happened?
Yeah. So, let's see. So I ended up, during that time, I also was guided to stop using money. So I didn't touch money for 7.5 months. Didn't touch money at all. And so I ended up learning very quickly how to dumpster dive and how to hitchhike and how to sleep outside an urban camp and use free boxes and get in touch with free culture. And like, I learned all of these tools and skills that helped me to navigate that particular sadhana. I called it was a sadhana. It was a practice, a spiritual practice, living moneyless. And so I ended up hitchhiking approximately 20,000 miles across North America and Mexico, visiting spiritual teachers, sages, shaman, intentional communities, sacred sites, and just practicing and studying every single wisdom tradition and healing arts that I could possibly get my hands on. And the way that I navigated that was I just kept on asking people, like, at the time, who are some of the most inspiring people you've ever met? Who are some of the most enlightened people? What are some of the most incredible communities you've heard of? Where are, and I just kept on going and hopping into another 18-wheeler truck and hitchhiking another 300 miles or 1,000 miles or whatever, anywhere, And because I have such strong intuition and I'm such an empathic being, I was always safe. And a lot of people don't understand that, but I was very safe because I can feel and mm-hmm. hear where people are going in their thoughts and their energy, and I can always, people want love and they want positive energy, and I can always, direct a conversation in a very inspirational way.
Yeah.
And that's what they more deeply seek, and I just was mindful with like timing and trying to not hitchhike at night because that was more tricky. But I did hitchhike, probably over 20,000 miles, and I went and visited so many mystics and sages and amazing spiritual teachers, and I discovered a lot of what's going on in the spiritual landscape in this continent, and it was very illuminating and edifying. And eventually I started getting depleted mm-hmm. and exhausted and lonely and sad and ungrounded, because the lifestyle's a little crazy.
Right. Not fully sustainable.
Yeah, most people wouldn't necessarily think that sounds like a great way to live your life, or
but that was serving
it
your
was
path
what I
and your
needed
soul. Yeah.
at the time. I really needed to be tracking what was going on with the spiritual and conscious evolution landscape in this continent and where the different movements were, and who the inspirational leaders were that were helping bring forth the new pathways and modalities and ways of being for the new earth, because that's part of my purpose also. Mm-hmm. So I did get, depressed and lonely and bleak, and after a while I was just like, this is exhausting. When does this end? And what's the next thing? Mm-hmm. And so, and then I wasn't really eating all that healthy, and you can't, just kind of going with what's available. And so I ended up joining a Zen meditation community in Portland, and shaved my head a couple times, and lived there and practiced Zen, still very much on a spiritual bypass. And there's been so many phases in the journey, and there's so many pieces I could talk about, but for the sake of distillation, I think one of the big turning point moments, and I'll also share about some of the major dark nights of the soul, but one of the big turning point moments was meeting my tribe at Hummingbird Community, an amazing community in northern New Mexico that's dedicated to the evolution of consciousness, and my beloved community there helped me ground and helped me feel family. I met my spirit parents, Catherine and Makasha Roski, who are beautiful visionary leaders for the New Earth. Yeah, gorgeous souls. They spiritually adopted me and took me in, and I acquired a bunch of spirit aunties and spirit uncles, all the tribe there at Hummingbird. So that helped me feel really grounded in that way of just feeling like I was being held by this family. And then there was this question of like, well, I found this spiritual family. Do I need to go back and do the shadow work with my biological family, or can I just keep putting my energy towards in this new life that I'm creating? And I really didn't know the answer. I was like, I don't know. But I discovered later that absolutely, when I looked at this chart of the heroine's journey or the hero's journey, it's not possible to complete the loop of a hero's journey without going home. Like the whole prodigal daughter returns.
Yes.
The prodigal son, prodigal daughter. Yeah. And another key piece that happened before I started going to do that deeper shadow work with and integrating with family constellation and family lineage was that I met and became one of the co-founders of the Goddess Temple in Ashland here. Goddess Temple in Ashland, Oregon. Myself and 18 other women leaders, priestesses, and healers came together in 2010. And in that moment, I looked around that circle of all these beautiful, embodied, magnetic, radiant, empowered women. And in that moment, till that point in my life, I said to myself, I'm like, I have never been in a circle of such powerhouse women in my life. How did I get invited into this circle? Like, it was funny because it took so long of being invited into circles like that, being like, how did I get invited here? You know, like, until it's finally like, oh, you get invited because this is a reflection. Like, because it was such strong programming of non-worthiness and not okay, not enough, something's wrong with me. Super strong programming it. And for all your formative years, you know, it leaves a very strong imprint. So after plugging in with my tribe at Hummingbird and weaving in with my sisters at the Goddess Temple, it was like, okay, starting to weave some threads of where I belong on this planet. So then I did go back to my biological family and do some deep shadow work, and that's where some of the real dark nights of the soul were navigated through, because such a strong contrast in ways of living and consciousness, and feeling seen and understood, seen for intentions and seen for, you know. So I needed to find a lot of tools. I needed strong tools. I needed tools that were going to work, because I had severe trauma and profound wounding. Yeah, and so I needed the strong tools. So some of the strongest tools that have worked for me are definitely plant spirit medicine, which I consider a very strong tool. It's not necessarily a tool for everyone, but I had some of the most exquisite, gorgeous awakenings of my entire life by working with various plant spirits.
And there's so many different forms too
Exactly.
of plant spirit, you know, like in the essence, in the herbal matter, in just the energetics.
Yeah. So for myself, some of the strongest ones that I worked with, I worked with Ayahuasca a number of times, and grandmother Ayahuasca Vine, has been a tremendous catalyst. I bow to her. She's one of my strongest allies in this world. I love her very much, and the places she took me to helped anchor an unshakable self-love that will never ever be shaken again. Thank God. Yeah. And also worked with some other plants, and pathogen plants. There's every culture, as you know, has different plants that they have worked with shamanically over centuries, if not millennia, such as iboga from Africa, and peyote from Latin America, and then down farther south, ayahuasca. And so I've worked with a number of different plants some that were working more with the heart healing plants. And those also were profound for me. Just cracked my heart open and just helped me to feel my own love, you know. So those were some of the greatest awakenings of my life. And also, you know, I spent a 2-year period, 2 years of going back after all the different awakenings and achievements, and having become a published magazine writer and writing for Spirituality and Health and Sage Woman and South Africa's Odyssey magazine and all these magazines, and then feeling like, okay, and I'm, you know, basically coming into my work as a priestess and sharing different work with sacred sexuality and things like that. Then I went for 2 years to be with my blood family, and I even lived under my parents' roof for a year at the age of like 38.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember you leaving and telling me that you were going back and going back to Ottawa now. And I remember feeling, wow, sister, you're going for a powerful reclamation and transformative journey. And so I want to reflect that piece of just, yeah, that awakening that I saw in you at that time, knowing that that was what you needed to do, and that this was such a key piece in your life.
So what I discovered was that was actually one of the most important vital steps that I needed to take on my path, was going back and doing that shadow work and reweaving those core foundational roots and those core relationships my soul chose to come into the family that I came into for a reason, and to be born in the culture and the community that I was born into. And so it definitely was a phase of retrieval of so many soul fragments. And basically with all those soul fragments out, you know, they were missing from my central channel, they were missing from my ability to be magnetic. You know, I needed to go retrieve those soul fragments and bring them back home to where they belong, so that I can actually fulfill my dharma and do my sacred work in the world. So I did find that after I did that deep shadow work and completed that 2-year cycle, that my point of attraction and my magnetism very much shifted, and it definitely augmented. And it's an ongoing journey. I mean, I still have so much to learn and so much to discover and so much work to do. And so some of the main practices and tools that were the most helpful for me, I did the presence process by Michael Brown twice. I had a lot of resistance. It's a 10-week process designed to help really bring us back into the present moment and retrieve back those energies that are lost in the past and or scattered towards the future. And so the presence process was very helpful. I did the work by Byron Katie to turn things around. Are you familiar with Byron Katie? Yeah, so if I was having a challenge with a certain person, I would turn it around so I could take full responsibility and accountability myself. Practices that helped me take full accountability as the creator of my life, you know, and just reclaim any victim energy. I thought I didn't have much victim energy. I thought I had done work on that, but there was still more work to do, and realizing that I feel that my soul chose everything, including a very challenging childhood. I don't understand why with my cognitive mind, but I choose to believe and choose to know that this is what I determined that my soul was going to do here in this world, and it would help fortify me and train me for the service I'm meant to share and offer. So that's where I'm at with it now, and it just feels like a much more empowered place.
And when you were there, when you went back home, what were some of the things that actually, through that work, what got transformed?
Well, I fell head over heels in love with my mom. Yeah, and it's quite strong because, you know, she had been one of the most painful relationships in my whole life. Like the level of pain and anguish and despair from our relationship, it was like she delivered my prime wound to me in this lifetime, and it was, I mean, you know, it was excruciating. And the fact that, like, you know, I've also done some work with the Gene Keys, which is the Gene Keys is a system of characterology. It's a very evolved, advanced system. similar a bit to human design. And anyway, we'll include a link about gene keys in case people.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
We'll put that in the link.
In my gene keys, one of my prime gifts, my number one prime gift is the mastery of forgiveness. So if I hadn't had so much trauma and dysfunction, how would I have been able to master forgiveness, I suppose, you know? So anyway, just falling so in love with my mom to where we now have this cozy relationship. We cuddle, I stroke her cheeks. I'm like, it's forgiven, you know? And it's like, that was not like that 3 years ago.
That's coming beyond full circle, really. But that through that wound that now you have both moved through. Yeah, and now she does a bunch of Vipassana retreats. She just got back like a week ago or something, 10 days ago. Yeah, I know. That's profound. And that's profound in your entire lineage, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Also brought my mom to meet Amma, who is a great teacher for both Achintya and I. Brought my mom to receive darshan from Amma. Yeah, it's amazing what the roles that the souls play, whether one is supposedly the mother and the daughter, who's the mother, who's the daughter, you know, it's like, we're all souls. So, and they say that we have agreements of what we've come here to do for each other and what we're here to help each other learn and awaken.
Absolutely.
So,
and by you going back, that served that purpose for you and for her. And is there anything else that has come alive from that time?
Yeah, a lot of things. I feel that one major thing is I had the vision of doing this project, bringing together visionary women leaders to share their courageous stories of inner alchemy and dark nights of the soul and awakening to their soul purpose. I had this vision for 6 years, and it wasn't until I returned back from that final chapter of those 2 years with my family, started making a few phone calls, and people were like, yes, let's do it now, let's do it. I was like, oh, okay. It's been 6 years that I've been waiting to do this. And then, so things started becoming possible, you know, because it changes your whole point of attraction when you come out of blaming someone or giving away your power by making someone else, you know, the perpetrator or something like that. And just, it changes our whole point of attraction and magnetism when we have that unconditional compassion for all of our brothers and sisters on this planet.
Is there any other pieces that feel really relevant that out of that you want to speak to? Out of your journey and experience.
Well, what I want to say to the people who have taken the time to watch this interview is thank you so much for the honor of hearing my journey. And the journey continues to unfold, and I feel that if there's anyone who's watching who's going through a particularly challenging time, I do feel that when we pray and when we ask for guidance, the pieces do always reveal and always show up. And I feel like trust is the number one thing. Trusting and just taking one step at a time, or as one of my friends says in a beautiful song that she wrote, one breath at a time. I mean, there's some days that are so challenging that it's like, okay, next breath, one breath at a time. And then, breathing, breath work, consciously connected breathing, which is a process from the presence process. All of these things have been so helpful. And if there's any other practices that I think of, I'll include them in the comments below this video. But some of the key ones, as I mentioned, were my work with the presence process, the work by Byron Katie, also doing, I've done some work with an incredible healer named Acacia Land, who is one of the featured women in the Swan Sisters, and she is a master healer, and she's been helping me clear out some of those imprints in my energy field that were holding me in those old ways of thinking of not worthy, not good enough, broke, unlovable. And so clearing out those imprints is also really powerful work. And so I definitely recommend Acacia. She's so incredible facilitator. And I think the number one thing that I want to say as we close is about creating tribe and creating sisterhood and creating safe, loving containers where we can be our authentic selves and be fully unmasked and be loved even in the most, parts that we're the most ashamed of or most nervous to reveal. I really encourage anyone watching, if you haven't found a community like that where you feel like you can really relax and fully be yourself, it's really, I feel like one of the teachers that I love quotes from this teacher. His name is Matt Lakeda. I don't know if you know who he is. Anyway, there's a quote about there's all these different practices and modalities, and the bottom line is we need love. We need to give and receive love, and we need to, I feel that we, at this time in our planet's evolution and healing, we need to create safe, sacred communities and containers to reveal all the parts of ourselves, to bring ourselves back into wholeness, to be seen and witnessed, and for there to be a loving reprogramming of those places that we did not think were lovable.
Right. It's like we can have all these tools and techniques, but if there's not really that community to support us with them, it sometimes can make them obsolete.
Totally.
Or that we can only go so far with them.
Yeah.
And it's like in our connection, connection, that there is, it's not a modality, it's what we're really all seeking, is that
what we're here for. Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
Any words of love, of transmission that you would like to offer our sisters that are listening and watching?
Yeah. Thank you so much for following your heart and soul's guidance to join us and to receive these transmissions from some of these beautiful, compassionate, loving souls, and sending so many blessings from our hearts to yours on your journey. And definitely please do keep in touch with us, and please, if there's anything that touched you in this interview or any of the other interviews, please do feel free to leave some comments in the space below the interviews.
I want to thank you, Prema Gaia, for listening to your heart's call, for weaving each and every one of us together for this series, and for you so vulnerably and deeply sharing about your experience and this journey of transmuting deep pain into glorious beauty. I honor you as a Swan Sister and the founder of this incredible project, and I bow to your heart. I see you. I'm fully supportive of you, of your gifts, and your purpose on this planet, and your generosity for all of us that are here. We're so honored to hear from you and for all the incredible space that you have been navigating and all that you are offering through this Swan Sisterhood series, and much to come.
Thank you, beloved. And please do be in touch with any feedback and questions, and so many blessings and much love to you from Ashland, Oregon. Namaste.
So much love, and I'm actually going to ask you if you'd be so willing to close this with a prayer for all of our Swan Sisters, a prayer that you so beautifully share to complete us.
Definitely. So let's take a moment and just turn within again. And taking a few deep breaths. Allowing the integration for all that was shared today and what that brings up for you and what that may catalyze in your own journey, on your own sacred path. And feeling ourselves held so consistently and so lovingly by our beautiful Mother Gaia, Mother Earth. feeling ourselves held up above by our benevolent spirit allies, our angels and guides, and our ancestors. Giving deep bows of gratitude to our spirit helpers up above. Deep bows of gratitude to Mother Gaia, all our plant and animal spirits, and the earth, water, air, fire, and ether. Gratitude for the honor and privilege of being here on this earth in human bodies, experiencing all the wonders and the magic and the miracles, and also the challenges and all the humanness of this wild and wonderful, amazing journey that we are all walking together. Deep bows of gratitude to you, everyone watching, bowing to your soul. Thank you for hearing the call and being with us. And much gratitude and love to Soul Sister Achintya. Is here with us from Hawaii, gracing us for a few days in Ashland, and what an incredible source of inspiration and light and kindness and compassion you are, Sister. Thank you so much for your grace. And bow to my own heart, which is the one heart where we all meet. Praying for maximum grace and clear divine guidance for each one of you and each one of us on our paths moving forward, that we can truly create the beautiful, peaceful, love-filled new earth that each one of us so deeply knows is possible and is coming and is here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Aho, blessed be.
Blessed be. Thank you.
Yeah. So now you know a little bit about my life.
I read about it all last night too.
Yeah.